Now, if we weren't low on time, I'd get the arms to wave too. I think for right now, I'm going to just see if this works okay. I'm going to go ahead and click on these guys so we can see it. Just want to verify that it all seems to be walking in place. And essentially, he's moonwalking, right? We don't see him going, he's not moving forward at all. He should be lumbering up and down. You know, I just can't resist. I have to at least do something with those arms. Maybe since his right leg's moving forward, maybe we'll just have his arm swing forward here just a little bit. These hands weigh a ton. Do the same thing with this back position. Oh, I moved that without adjusting the pivot. Notice that his shoulder moved in. So I'm going to adjust the pivot up here. There we go. And in this case, this arm's moving forward. Notice we need to fix the knee here. So I'm going to do that. There we go. And in this case, let's see. This leg is moving forward, so that means that this arm's going to move back. The front arm will move back a little bit. And move the pivot up here. Swing this back. Maybe just rotate that hand just a little. This guy will swing forward. Okay. So goes back and goes forward. Alright, so now we've got just some plain arm movement. And if you wanted to have his head, tilt or something, you could do that too. Maybe his head bends down. And on the next passing pose, maybe his head goes up a little bit. So you kind of get the idea of it. The trick here is to get all of the cycle, at least the key poses, in before we start tweening. So, and you'll notice I'm just setting up keyframes. We could do this with modern motion tweens in Flash, but the classic tween, if you're using CS4 or later, they call it a classic tween, and CS3 and before it's just a motion tween. The classic tween is nice because we can set our keyframes before we actually see stuff in motion. So I just kind of like walking through this without having everything get disjointed and breaking apart. Okay, so I'm going to save, and let's try it. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to take the whole kit and caboodle. So I'm just going to click in one frame in between the first two keyframes. For the top layer, hold down Shift, click on a frame somewhere between the last two keyframes of the bottom layer. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Create Classic Tween. If this works properly, you should see a whole bunch of blue arrows appear. This one screwed up, and I think that's because of that problem with the drawing layer. So we're going to come back and look at that in a second. Well, I guess we should look at it maybe right now, huh? Let me turn off visibility around it. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on there. His hand should get out of the way too. there must be some elements on this frame. I can tell. Here's how we can check. So that little dotted line is what I'm worried about. If I click on this and go to Properties, let's see. See how when I clicked on it, it says Mixed over here? Alright, so we get the initial thing set up. Now let's scrub it and click away. And let's just see. Actually, it looks pretty good. You can see that the ankle gets detached. The left ankle gets a little detached as we run this. We'll figure that out. The arms are working, the head's bobbing, that stuff. So the tweening up top is good. Right? And the right leg looks pretty good. So I think what we need to do is focus our attention on the left leg and see where it goes from there. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and hide everything except for hips, left foot. And I want to see, I wonder if when I repasted, no, it kept its pivot point, so that's not it. So let's just look at this. Yeah, there's a big jump here that's happening between here and here. And that might have been because I repasted. Let's see. Oh, the pivot here. It's the pivot point. So notice the pivot point on this guy is down below, and there's a little bit of that artwork in there too. But then the pivot point when we get to the end is up top. So what's happening is Flash is moving, it's tweening between those pivots. The pivot's essentially just moving up. So all we have to do, I think, is right on here, let's correct this pivot point. Now let's double check here. Yeah, for some reason the pivot point got out of place. It must have converted that artwork into a symbol in some of these places. So I'm just resetting this pivot. And if I'd been a little more careful when I started, I wouldn't have this problem because I would have had just the symbol on the layer rather than symbol and artwork. Let's untween these guys. So I'm just shift selecting. I'm going to choose Remove Tween. It's a little hard to look at it while it's being tweened, isn't it? Let's go ahead and sorry, I should just select a group. I'm just going to double check and make sure that all the pivots are set properly. I'm not going to worry about the hip. Oh, if that happens, I accidentally double-clicked. Just go back. That looks correct. That's good. Those look good. So again, I'm just checking pivot points. And this last one. Alright, I'm going to retween it now. So I'm just selecting these guys, holding down Shift, clicking across. As long as you're in between two keyframes, you get that whole span. I'm going to right click and just classic tween. Still breaking that foot around a bit. So I think what I'm going to do is just correct this. I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to rotate the leg. So I'm going to insert a keyframe and just rotate this into place, get it corrected. There we go. Come out a little bit more. And again, I don't think you'd have this problem if you clean up the stuff from the stage properly, because what happened is I moved that pivot point and that screwed everything up. So I'm just basically showing Flash how to correct this now. It seems a little silly to have to do this, and I just want to emphasize that this isn't something that you're going to have to normally do. So I'm just inserting keyframes just a little ahead, and I'm just helping Flash kind of find its way here. Move this down. There we go. And one last one. Rotate that around. All right, good. Go back and show everything. Let's test it. Cool. Doesn't seem like his feet drag underneath the ground. That's what you want to kind of keep an eye on. All I'm doing, by the way, is pressing return just to kind of double check. He seems like he's kind of moseying along. So I'm going to save. And now we get to do the fun part. I'm going to come back to the scene. Let's zoom out a little bit. Window. Now if we play this, you see it looks better. He's at least walking on the stage. If you look carefully at his feet, you'll notice this thing. There's a phenomenon when you're doing walk cycles like this. It's called either skating or moonwalking. Skating is where the foot slides a little bit forward. Moonwalking is where the foot slides a little bit back in the same place. Right now, he's skating a little bit. As he lands, his foot slides a little. Even if you watch network TV, every once in a while you'll see characters that are skating or moonwalking. So I'll zoom in just so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And if down on the stage here, if I put down, let's say just a little tick mark, I'm going to just make a new guide here, and I'll just lay down a line right where this foot is. Well, of course, I picked a white line. Let's set this to another color. There we go. So you'll see as he plants, he slid forward pretty good distance. It's right about there where he slid forward. So what I need to do is kind of correct for that distance. Here's the cool thing about making this a motion tween. I can never remember, so you can always just try. I think if you make it longer, it takes him a longer amount of time to get across the stage, so he won't skate as much. So let's just drag this out a little bit. Now you can see he's moonwalking. The guides are this. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this. The guides are not really necessary. You can see that he slides a little bit on the stage as he's moving. So it's too much. Let's move this back to maybe 75. Still a little bit of a skate. not as much anymore. So we'll go up to 80. Better. Now it just kind of looks like he has a little bit of grease on his feet, but he's at least walking along. And we could make the animation, we could go through and pick at it and make it really good as we go. But I think the key thing that I want you to get from this is this idea that animating the character, it's a first of all, by editing a symbol, we can build the symbol out, and then we can put this character in, and by the way, we can have multiple characters. So I could bring in another zombie here. Let me make another layer. From our library, just bring in another goon. And I'll go ahead and set this to a motion tween. Now we have a couple of zombies running across, and you could make layers and layers of this. If I test the movie, there we go. We have our beginnings of our army of the living dead. So hopefully that's what you got from this exercise, the importance of building graphic symbols, and then the idea of making graphics that have pivot points that build up that symbol. Please let me know if you have questions, but I hope this is helpful.